Amazing CEO exposed. Thrown out of her own hotel. Transformed by firing all 50 staff in 2 minutes. Emily Carter stared at her reflection. Her perfectly sculpted features distorted by the shadows of an impending storm. 3 days ago, she was the high-flying CEO of Chicago's leading luxury hotel chain, riding the wave of success. Now, at the center of a media frenzy and social media uproar, her name was synonymous with cruelty and incompetence. How had everything unraveled so quickly? Behind her designer suits and lavish lifestyle lay an unbearable pressure, expectations carved into her psyche by investors hungry for profits and headlines that demanded perfection. The very faults of her character were laid bare, thrust into the public eye by the viral video that painted her as the villain of the season. Each rolling wave of criticism crashed over her, threatening to drown the ambition that had propelled her to greatness. The shouts of former employees echoed in her ears. His thoughts ping-ponged between guilt and resentment, the weight of the decision weighing heavily on her conscience. Was it wrong to demand excellence, or had she crossed a sacred boundary? How could she lead with strength when her entire foundation seemed to crumble beneath her? In moments of solitude, she felt like a mere puppet strings pulled by board members who wanted results, unaware of the human cost beneath the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every negative headline, every public squabble, Emily felt her grip on her identity loosen. Losing her position at the first hotel she built had felt like losing a part of her soul. Now, she returned to her childhood home dimly lit, the aging wallpaper peeling like her own pristine image, and found not just rejection, but an unexpected confrontation. There stood Margaret, her estranged mother, eyes narrowed with judgment and disappointment. Their past was a tapestry woven with sacrifice and unfulfilled dreams. Her mother's quiet resentment of everything Emily seemed to have won. As she settled into the bitter memories, frustration clawed at her. The attic became her refuge as she unearthed her grandmother's journals, revealing the struggles faced by women like her, stories bursting with humility and resilience. They reiterated a hard truth. The greatest asset was the people, not the bottom line. At the same time, doubts loomed like storm clouds. Were those ideals too soft for this cutthroat industry? Could she truly shift gears after how she had shattered lives? As she read, resolve intertwined with panic. What if she failed again? The thought of reaching out to former staff felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, peer pressure coaxing her to jump without a parachute. Friends had scorned her. The media smirked. Her mother watched, a voracious reminder of her faltered pride. Each attempt to rebuild felt futile in the face of mounting skepticism. Tonight's meeting loomed like a countdown to a disaster, a moment that could either restore her shattered reputation or seal her fate as a failure. As Emily rehearsed her speech in front of the mirror later, questions echoed incessantly. What would they think of her? Could forgiveness be offered when the scars were still fresh? The future felt dark, hanging in the balance between redemption and ruin, leaving her standing, trembling on the brink of an emotional abyss. She closed her eyes, and the whispers of doubt surged forward. It's now or never. Would this be her moment of clarity or an irrevocable plunge back into the depths of turmoil? The minutes ticked by like hours as Emily prepared to face what loomed ahead. A gathering of former employees now sat before her, a assemblage of broken trust and raw emotions. How could she re-enter the very environment she had shattered not long ago? The fear of their judgment paralyzed her, but she envisioned the glimmer of hope she had unearthed from her grandmother's journals. They reminded her of the courage it took to embrace vulnerability, a shield she would have to wield tonight. When the time came, she stepped into the room, nerves coiling in the pit of her stomach like a tightly wound spring. Their faces told stories of hurt, and for the first time, she didn't see them as mere statistics or margins on a balance sheet. They were individuals, each bearing the scars of loss and betrayal. A lump formed in her throat as she approached the podium, each step feeling like a trek uphill. "Thank you all for coming." Her voice wavered at first, but steadiness began to replace apprehension. "I'm aware that 3 days ago, I publicly humiliated each and every one of you. I made decisions without considering the profound impact on your lives. And for that, I am deeply sorry." She felt a shift in the room, a collective intake of breath as her admission sunk in. Emily continued, a fire igniting within her. "I know words can't mend what was broken. I've spent a lifetime learning that numbers and success are meaningless if you sacrifice relationships in the process." Eyebrows arched. She could see discernible changes in their expression's curiosity. Perhaps hope, and no longer was it about defending her previous actions. It was about building a bridge to the future. "I want to take responsibility. I want to hear your stories, your perspectives. My goal is to redefine how we create a community, not just a business." As she spoke, she felt her resolve crystallize. This moment demanded authenticity. A voice suddenly cut through the air. A woman from the back, arms crossed tightly, mouth drawn in a thin line. "What makes you think we want to listen to you? You fired us without a thought," she challenged, each word laced with bitterness. Emily hesitated briefly but then met the gaze head-on. "I understand that my ego built walls around my judgment, clouded my values and caused chaos. If anyone deserves skepticism, it's me." The moment felt electric. Raw honesty hung in the space between them, saturated with the tension of unspoken history. "But I invite you to hold me accountable. I don't want your resurrection to be rooted in profit margins but rather in rekindled trust and a sense of belonging." Another voice chimed in, an old colleague. "Trust, Emily? Wasn't that what you initially promised all of us?" The room buzzed with mixed reactions, some nodding while others scowled. This was the messy business of reconciliation, the chaos of emotions colliding. "Trust is earned, not given," Emily said slowly, collecting her thoughts. She knew she couldn't undo the past, but perhaps she could use her mistakes as a foundation. "Let us set up monthly meetings to address concerns, to innovate together. If you're willing, I'd love for us to begin that journey now." No one moved. The weight of the decision lingered in the air, thick with uncertainty. Emily felt the ticking clock echo her heart. Would they dismiss her outreach or see it as an opportunity to pave a new path? Just when she thought the room would remain in limbo, she spotted a hesitant hand raise. Could this simple gesture be a sign? Just then, realization dawned upon her. This was more than a meeting. It was a crucible for transformation. But as hope flickered, a sharp text buzzed on her phone, a notification from her public relations team. "Emily, breaking news. An exposé is about to drop about your past. Prepare for the fallout." With the floor beneath her shaking once more, Emily's heart raced as a familiar terror gripped her again. Would her moment of redemption be snatched away before it began? The evening's fragile future suddenly hung in the balance, and she was left grappling with the unpredictable storm of consequences threatening to engulf her once more. Emily stood frozen, the text buzzing in her hand, a stark interruption to the fragile moment she was trying to cultivate. The words felt damning, each letter amplifying the dread churning within her gut. An exposé, what would it reveal? What had she overlooked in her ascent? Glimmers of doubt seeped through her open resolve. Would her peers see her as that ruthless CEO, the one whose past actions had led to their unemployment? Or could they understand the woman who stood there now, weary but yearning for redemption? She had only just begun to mend the frayed ties with her former employees, and now this? As her mind whirled, another voice broke through her turbulent thoughts. "What's wrong, Emily?" It was Mark, a senior project manager she had worked closely with. The concern on his face mirrored the anxiety squeezing her chest. She took a breath, gathering her wits. "I just received news that an exposé about my past is coming out," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's going to paint a very unflattering picture. But I need to get this out in the open before it blindsides us." Silence fell over the room, a stillness that amplified the weight of her admission. Faces turned from skepticism to a range of emotions: fear, anger, curiosity. Why should we care? The same woman from earlier challenged again, her arms defiantly crossed. Because it's the truth, Emily said, finding her voice among the chaos. And the truth needs to be unraveled by me first, not through sensationalism. I will own it. You deserve to hear it from me. The uneasiness hung like a thick fog, but in that moment, Emily felt a strange clarity. A visceral truth was standing at the forefront of her mind. Vulnerability had to be met with courage. This was an opportunity, a chance to show them that she was no longer the distant figure who had made decisions without considering the human impact. I will use every ounce of humility and honesty I possess, Emily continued, her heart navigating the tightrope of disclosure. To grow from this experience individually and as a team, I want us to turn this challenge into a catalyst for rebuilding trust. The room shifted. Emily could see expressions morphing, even the skeptical woman uncrossing her arms, assessing the person standing before them. The air grew thicker, but she pressed on. I want a dialogue with each of you, to face the consequences together, to adapt and build anew instead of being defined by past failures. Who is with me? She felt a pulse of energy, a flicker of potential, as another hand raised tentatively in the back. I'll talk. A voice chimed in shyly, light cutting through the trepidation. Slowly, other hands began to join, and the room felt alive anew. But just as her heart began to swell with a fragile glimmer of hope, her phone buzzed again. The name on the screen sharpened her focus. An old rival had just posted a video online. The title? The Dangerous Lies of Emily, a CEO with skeletons. With dread pooling in her stomach, she contemplated the revelations that awaited her. Would she have the strength to face the truth and the very public consequences that it carried? The storm was gathering, and her new chapter was about to begin. But she was left standing on the precipice of uncertainty, wondering if she would fall or rise. The decision rested in her hands, as was the power to redefine her narrative. Nevertheless, she had to ask herself, would she reclaim her story or let it be dictated by others? With the ground shifting beneath her once more, Emily felt the walls she had begun to build tremble. The stakes had never felt so high, and she realized it was time to confront what lay ahead, not just for herself, but for those who dared to hope alongside her. The exposure had begun, and the world would soon learn her truth. Emily's heart hammered, each thud resonating like the roar of a cascading waterfall in her chest. She locked her gaze on Mark, who still watched her with concern, the others around slowly processing the impending storm. A deep inhale filled her lungs, yet she felt wisps of panic creeping back in. How could she lead them through this turbulence when she was struggling to keep her own fears at bay? The video flickered on her phone, but she resisted the urge to click it. Instead, she set it down, reminding herself that growth required silent acceptance of discomfort. It was time to break free from the constraints of anxiety that her past mistakes had forged in her. She was not merely a reflection of those decisions. She was an architect of change. We can't just sit here dreading what others might say, Emily began, her tone gaining authority she didn't fully feel. This is a chance for us to be authentic, to own our narratives and reshape how we are perceived. Let's have a candid conversation, starting now. As she looked around the room, she noticed a flicker of resolve among her team members. The once skeptical faces, contorted with doubt, were now beginning to show intrigue. Doors were opening, if only slightly. Mark finally spoke. What do you propose we do? The question hung in the air, a critical inquiry beneath the shifting tension. We address the video, she replied, the determination in her voice surprising even herself. We gather our team, discuss the content, and develop our strategy from within before retaliating or hitting back publicly. Transparency is our armor now. Do you think it'll work? He asked, a hint of hesitance still present. Honestly, I don't know, Emily admitted, her voice softening. But I do know hiding won't get us anywhere. Being vulnerable is my first real step toward recovery. That's how I plan to lead you all through this chaos. With that, Emily noticed a subtle shift. The eyes in the room reflected a mutual understanding. They were tied to the core of each other's fears. They too had a stake in her transformation, whether they acknowledged it or not. "I'll support this," Mark said, and with that, a few other employees chimed in, a ripple effect of agreement beginning to spark. Together, they created an impromptu plan, brainstorming ways to proactively communicate their truth. Emily felt an unexpected warmth of camaraderie blanket her, contrasting sharply with the chill that had enveloped her moments earlier. Amidst their discussions, Emily also laid bare her past, how decisions driven by ambition had led to the dismissal of loyal staff. Each revelation felt like stepping onto a tightrope, the balance precarious and thin. The challenge was to elevate herself beyond that distant executive figure many resented. As the team engaged in heart-to-heart discussions, ideas began to flourish. A team member suggested they create a video response of their own, emphasizing unity and transparency, showcasing that their story was not just hers, but a collective experience. But even as excitement mounted, dread lurked just beneath the surface. Emily felt the weight of her past press against her. A gnawing question seeped into the back of her mind. Would this newfound openness expose them to even more criticism? The moment she felt most alive, a thought shared among colleagues, an unfiltered dialogue reminiscent of their earlier days, suddenly ignited doubt. The world outside waited expectantly, poised on the precipice of judgment. As their brainstorming spiraled, the ideas grew wild and inventive. The energy in the room soared. Still, anxiety prickled at the back of Emily's mind. For every moment of empowerment, she felt the adversary close in, mocking her journey, whispering that she might falter again. It all culminated when her phone buzzed yet again, another notification, another potential blow. This time, it wasn't her rival's video but a new headline from a different outlet. Emily's transformation. A PR stunt or genuine intent? Her breath caught. Would this next chapter truly be one of growth or merely the theater of redemption? The tension mounted, leaving her confronted with one last, unresolved question: could genuine change withstand the glare of public scrutiny? And as the team continued their lively discourse, standing at the edge of a fresh potential, Emily braced herself for what lay ahead. The moment to confront her adversaries, within and outside, was rapidly approaching. Would she hold firm to her newfound resolve or allow the past to shackle her once more? Emily stared at her phone, the headline blaring like an alarm bell in the dim office. Amazing CEO exposed. Thrown out of her own hotel, transformed by firing all 50 staff in 2 minutes. She could almost feel the thrum of social media reaction echoing in the back of her mind, murmurs of ridicule and disbelief that pieced together the narrative of her downfall. Redirecting her attention back to the team, she could see the glimmers of concern mirrored on their faces. This wasn't the start to a new path she'd envisaged. It was a storm that risked drowning all her efforts to mold their future together. The challenge wasn't merely about confronting the backlash but navigating her growth amid it. "There will be opinions," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "But our next steps will define us, not their words. We have the power to write our own story." Each syllable felt like forging a blade against the fears threatening to slice through her resolve. "How do we start?" Another team member, Jenna, asked, her eyes wide with both apprehension and hope. The spirit in the room shifted, turning from desolation to a shared desire to rewrite the narrative written for them. "We prepare our response. We make it personal, not just facts but real feelings. Our transparency must be genuine," Emily replied. "And we need a unified front. Every voice matters, including yours." The collective tension eased slightly as they began to rally around her words. Emily felt her confidence gathering as brainstorming ensued. They scribbled ideas on whiteboards, interspersing seriousness with laughter as they crafted potential script lines for a video that would present their unified message. Yet, her mind darted like a wild hare, wrestling with intermittent bouts of doubt. Surely others had faced such public disgrace and faltered. Might she be destined for the same fate? The stigma of firing loyal employees lingered, not just in headlines but in her memory. Each face of the past workers, now free of their positions yet tethered to a loss, haunted her, feeding her regret. "Can we really shift perceptions?" Mark's voice sliced through her mounting anxiety. "Public sentiment can be brutal. Then we own that sentiment," she declared. This isn't about erasing mistakes, but acknowledging them. I need to not only be an inspiration but also a reminder of the cost of ambition devoid of empathy. In those words, Emily felt the weight shift. She was not merely a subject of the narrative, but a rewriter of it. She looked around the room, witnessing the slow nods of agreement. Each member was beginning to understand that they were players not just in her journey but in their own. The fear of condemnation still lingered, but so did the promise of partnership and rebuilding. Emily took a deep breath, her resolve crystallizing. Shirking previous tendencies to compartmentalize her professional facade, she committed to intertwining authenticity with ambition. They would craft a video that showcased not just her own journey, but every person who had been affected. Each face would narrate part of the collective experience they were set to address. Just as their ideas began morphing into concrete strategies, her phone buzzed again, prompting a reflexive glance. This time, it was a message from an influencer known for their fierce critiques. How will you respond to your past? A knot formed in her stomach, the weight of the question heavy and charged. Beneath it lay an uncomfortable truth: her past behaviors and the echoes of selfish decisions still shaped how the world perceived her. Honesty is the best policy, she murmured, half to herself and half to the room. It was a faint whisper that echoed louder than she anticipated, quickly catching the attention of her team. So we own our mistakes, right? Jenna asked, eyes glinting with excitement, the recognition of a shared burden igniting the room. Yes, Emily affirmed, the conviction now palpable. We will share every misstep. But in doing so, we forge a path to growth. The energy shifted again, morphing into a unique alchemy of determination. They weren't just reacting. They were becoming active participants in their redemption story, assessing what the future could be, not what it had once been. But just as momentum surged within them, Emily felt a raw uncertainty. What would happen when they unveiled their vulnerabilities? Would it be bravery forged in fire or the public spectacle that she feared? The crest of excitement clashed with the looming chaos outside, threading together a narrative no one could have anticipated. And as the plans coalesced, Emily faced the reality that the moment of truth was fast approaching. The words of her past continued to haunt her, but without confrontation, they would never be silenced. The time to face everything, the judgments, the results of her decisions, and ultimately herself, was drawing near. Would she emerge transformed or imprisoned by her own former choices? Emily's heart raced as she contemplated the impending launch of their video. They had dedicated hours to crafting a narrative around vulnerability, a strategy that would either cement her as a paragon of personal growth or cast her deeper into the pit of public disdain. The duality of her situation pressed heavily upon her. She was both the architect of her redemption and the subject of scorn. Let us do one more run-through, she urged her team, her voice steady despite the whirlwind inside. They gathered in a circle, the energy palpable as everyone stared at their phones, waiting for her lead. As she scanned the faces around her, Emily beheld a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. These were the very individuals she had once chastised for their shortcomings. Now, each member exemplified the passion she initially sought to ignite. Did they truly believe in her vision, or were they merely swept up in a momentary wave of optimism? Today I sent about me, she began, looking into each pair of eyes. It's about all of us, who we've been and who we intend to become. She hesitated briefly, the prospect of her raw honesty sending electric jolts of fear coursing through her. Yet she knew the truth had to be at the forefront. I can't erase my past decisions, but we can use them to carve a brand new narrative. At that moment, the hesitance in the room broke. Jenna, typically bubbly, shifted in her seat, her brows knitted together. But what if the video backfires? She challenged, her doubt carving through the fragile confidence. What if they don't recognize the growth you've done? It's a possibility, Emily replied quietly, the reality washing over her like a cold tide. She felt the knot in her stomach tighten, but something else sparked in its place. Defiance. But we have to take that risk. We're showing them we're not afraid to confront our mistakes. There's power in vulnerability. Silence enveloped the room as her words landed. She could almost hear the collective heartstrings being tugged. Let us focus on our stories first, Mark interjected thoughtfully. What each of us has learned through this process can humanize everything. It won't be just your story, Emily, it will be all of ours. The idea glimmered with possibility. What if they pooled their experiences, their regrets and recoveries, together? This resignation had burdened them all, but channeling it into one cohesive narrative could expose not only herself but the whole team as individuals who had long been defined by their struggles. As the tension morphed into nervous energy, brainstorming ignited again. They dissected moments of hardship, their defining choices, and the quiet awakenings that followed. As they wove in their contributions, Emily began to feel the boundaries of her leader persona blur into something far more relatable. And the swirling discussions, a nagging apprehension persisted, lurking behind her confidence. Was she truly ready to share such intimate pieces of herself? Each revelation would undoubtedly prompt scrutiny, and being vulnerable leveled the playing field in a way that terrified her. Would the weight of her past crush her ambitions anew? Despite the growing clarity in the group, she felt isolated in her struggle. Each time she considered the final product, the echo of her choices rang painfully true. This is scary, she admitted, her vulnerability spilling forth, and I'm scared of what comes next. Emily's admission hung in the air, exposed yet liberating. Instead of shying away from the indecision, it offered a moment of connection. Each person nodded, and with that bond, she forged deeper into their collective resolve. They had begun to draft a message that could shift perceptions, a confessional tapestry that transformed embarrassment into empowerment. As the team shared their lived experiences, a sense of authenticity blossomed, transforming their insecurities into a source of pride. But as the final edits loomed closer, Emily's internal battle raged on. The prospect of facing the public weighed heavily, and she couldn't shake the doubt that slithered back into her mind. What if they viewed her as a sympathy ploy? When Emily finally stepped back to assess their efforts, she felt a rush of both hope and fear. A decision lay before her, one that would demand even more personal courage than what she had summoned thus far. The weight of their collective honesty was daunting, but so was the possibility of true transformation. Could they truly transcend their public image? As they prepared to film, the truth loomed ahead like an uninvited guest. Emily was not only readying herself to share their narrative but also awakening to the realization that they now stood on the precipice of a more profound battle, one against the world, or perhaps just against their own past. And at that moment, with cameras rolling and hearts racing, Emily felt a tempest rage within her. Acceptance or denial? The facade could no longer hold. It was time to confront the truth, not just about herself, but about the shadows cast by her decisions. The moment of raw honesty was at the door, waiting to burst into the light. Would she embrace it or push it away? As the cameras began to roll, Emily's heart pounded louder in her chest. The awareness that this was not merely another video but a deep, confessional exploration weighed heavily on her. She was committed to unveiling her vulnerabilities, but with that choice came a sense of responsibility that felt remarkably daunting. Let us take it from the top and feel the energy, she instructed, her voice steadier than she felt. The crew adjusted their angles, and she turned to the lens, her reflection flickering in the bright lights. Here was an opportunity wrapped in risk, an embodiment of everything she had worked to transform. Yet, as the shots rolled, she noticed her authenticity was being obscured by rehearsed lines, a hint of performance creeping in. "Stop," she called softly, the gears of her mind shifting once more. She paused and gathered her thoughts. Perhaps the script needed a breath of organic air. "I think we need to change our approach." "Change how?" Mark asked, eyebrows furrowing. All eyes turned to her, a mixture of surprise and expectation hanging in the air. "We need to be raw, really raw," she asserted, determined to pierce through the facades they had created. "This isn't about projecting strength, it's about embracing our frailty." The applause she received the last time felt mere echoes compared to what she longed for now. Genuine connection. Emily felt herself recoil from the possibility of rejection but fought against it. Her evolution had begun under the premise of acceptance and authenticity. Wasn't this the fuel that could galvanize her team? Before recording again, let us sit in silence for a moment. Let us think about the hardest moments we've faced. No shields. As the silence unfolded, she allowed herself to feel the weight of her journey. Every mistake, every misstep surged back echoes of indignities, pervasive doubts, and self-imposed limitations. It was suffocating but oddly liberating. When they resumed filming, her voice emerged unfiltered. "I'm Emily," she shared, "and I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. In fact, I built my career on the backs of those mistakes." Each word felt like an unburdening, a gentle unraveling of her tightly woven image of a flawless CEO. Mark stepped in, complimenting her with his words. "Yes, it's through our failures that we learn to rise. I battled through my own challenges and learned the hard way what truly matters." His contribution turned the narrative into a genuine tapestry, reflecting a convergence of experiences rather than a singular spotlight on her journey. As they collectively bared their souls, Emily felt new layers of strength unfold. No longer did she see every admission as a potential blow to her reputation. Instead, they became essential threads, weaving the fabric of who they were as individuals striving for growth amid struggle. But amidst the exchange, doubt flickered once more. Would their courage resonate with the audience, or would it be viewed as mere exploitation of vulnerability? Their stories intertwined, yet the final verdict remained uncertain. As the last segment of their filming wrapped, Emily sighed, exhausted yet exhilarated. They had crafted something transcendent. She could see glimpses of a future that didn't hinge on external validation but on genuine self-worth and growth. The question still lingered, however. Was the world ready to embrace this authenticity, or would they recoil at the first signs of weakness? Emily knew the stakes were high, and the anxiety flared as they approached the launch of their new narrative. Vulnerability was liberating, but it could also expose them to ridicule. In those moments of reflection, Emily found herself at a crossroads yet again. Would she step fully into this newfound authenticity or retreat to the comparative safety of her previous image? Would embracing vulnerability lead to profound growth, or would it incite a backlash she feared? With the first comments about the video fluttering in, some already trailing whispers of doubt and skepticism, Emily took a breath. The winds of change had begun to stir. Now more than ever, choices loomed on the horizon, and the consequences of those choices were about to become startlingly apparent. As her phone lit up, signaling an incoming message from someone she hadn't spoken to in years, dread tightened around her, amplifying her sense of impending revelation. Was it a call for reckoning, or was it an unexpected lifeline? Emily stared at the screen, her pulse racing. The name flashed across her notifications. Sarah. A specter from her past she had thought was buried beneath layers of professional decorum and time. What could Sarah possibly want now? The old trepidation churned slowly in her gut, the familiar sting of painful memories surfacing. Gathering her courage, she opened the message. "Can we talk? I need to discuss the recent video." A simple request, yet it felt like a key that could unlock an old wound. Would she confront her unresolved feelings about their fallout? Or would this become another addition to her burgeoning list of pressures? The crew was beginning to disband. The energy in the room shifted from creative vigor to relaxed banter, a bittersweet realization of a job well done. Emily, however, remained distracted. She wrapped her fingers around her phone, deliberating. "Hey," Mark approached, a hint of concern in his eyes. "You okay? You seemed a bit off during the last take." His tone was supportive, but the glances from the other crew members reminded her they were waiting for her to lead. "Just thinking," she replied, forcing a smile, "about the next steps and how to release the video responsibly." Yet internally her thoughts spiraled. What if Sarah's message contained truths she was not yet ready to face? Amid the quick-paced chatter surrounding her, Emily felt herself retreat into her thoughts. She had set out to embrace vulnerability, to lay herself bare before the world, but an unsettling weight clung to her. It was one thing to expose her flaws. It was another to uncover the past that still haunted her. Taking a decisive breath, she mumbled a quick excuse to Mark and stepped outside. The evening air was brisk, sharp enough to draw her attention away from the turmoil inside. As twilight enveloped the horizon, she sat on a nearby bench, her heart gradually slowing to a more palpable rhythm. Reading Sarah's message again, she sensed a conflict rising within her. Part of her craved the closure they never had, the sense of betrayal that lingered too long. But another part wanted to guard the progress she had made, worried that revisiting the old could reignite the ashes of unresolved resentment. Before she could spiral deeper, the idea struck. Instead of fearing the confrontation, why not reclaim her narrative? She had begun this journey of authenticity, she must face it fully. Strength would not emerge from hiding but rather from confronting the ghosts that held her back. Feeling a surge of determination, she rose from the bench with a clear intention. Call Sarah. Find out what the message meant for her future, not just as a CEO, but as a human being pursuing her evolution. Yet the uncertainty was daunting. What if Sarah had been holding on to bitterness? How would that affect her newly fostered resolve? With trembling fingers, she dialed. The phone hummed in her ear, the line connecting. Each ring seemed to echo her trepidation. And then, just as it connected, the voice on the other end brought not just relief but the kind of clarity Emily would need to prepare for the decisions looming ahead. Emily, Sarah's voice was steady yet laced with palpable tension. We need to discuss the aftermath of your video. What you did, it's dangerous. Emily inhaled sharply, ready to confront whatever storm was brewing. A sense of urgency pulling her closer to rediscovering her past, intertwined with her authentic self. The conversation ahead would test her resolve and redefine her leadership, a necessary catalyst to embrace the authenticity she yearned for. But as she spoke, new doubts surfaced. What did Sarah mean by dangerous? And just how much would this conversation challenge her hard-earned step into vulnerability? The stakes were growing impossibly high. Emily's pulse quickened in response to Sarah's ominous tone. The word dangerous lingered in the air like an uninvited guest. She could almost feel Sarah's disapproval seep through the phone, transforming her curiosity into a sharp blade that threatened to cut her progress in half. What do you mean, dangerous? Emily's voice was steadier than she felt. The boldness surprised her. She wasn't merely reacting anymore but engaging, driven by the need for clarity. She needed to navigate this conversation carefully to protect the strides she had made in her personal and professional life. Your video, Emily, Sarah continued, her voice firm. You exposed our work, our failures, our private discussions, and now everyone inside and outside the industry is scrutinizing every part of it. You're putting your credibility at risk. Emily felt the familiar heat of defensiveness rise within her. But I had to be honest. I thought authenticity was the way forward. Isn't that what we talked about? The words tumbled out with an urgency she hadn't expected to feel. Yes, but there's a fine line between honesty and recklessness. You're the face of this company now. You have to think about the consequences, Sarah replied, a slight edge creeping into her voice. The tension was palpable as Emily processed Sarah's words. There it was, conflict, the very essence of change breathed behind their conversation. Sarah's concerns partly echoed what she had felt before posting the video. Deep within, Emily queried. Was her pursuit of authenticity corroding the professional image she had constructed over the years? Taking a breath, she positioned her thoughts. If I don't own my story, if I don't confront our past, how do I expect others to trust me? I thought you believed in this too? Her challenge hung heavy in the air, laden with unspoken questions. There is a balance, Emily. Your vulnerability can create connections, but it can also invite criticism and doubt. It's dangerous because it could divide the team, undermine your leadership, and lead to upheaval. As Sarah spoke, Emily visualized the ripple effect of her actions, the internal murmurs, the uncertain glances among colleagues. For every risk she embraced, a counterbalance of caution danced in her mind. Yet this conversation also held potential, a crucible for her growth. Was it time to accept that leadership also meant navigating this precarious landscape of vulnerability and responsibility? Maybe it's time to redefine what I stand for as a leader, Emily suggested, forcing herself to remain calm. I want to create a culture where we embrace mistakes, where those vulnerabilities inspire growth. Isn't that what our company needs? I want that too, Emily, Sarah said, her tone softening slightly. But it's about strategy. We can't drive change just through exposure. You need to articulate a vision and win them over before you peel back the layers. Emily felt a spark ignite within her. A powerful revelation illuminated her thoughts. She didn't need to bow under the weight of fear. Instead, by learning to balance her authenticity with strategic intent, she could mold a more resilient identity for herself. Perhaps it was time to reshape the narrative and emphasize that strength lay not just in openness but in calculated vulnerability that inspired confidence and change. Let us work on that then, Emily proposed, determination gripping her. Help me formulate this vision. Together, we can show how authenticity can be empowering rather than splitting the team apart. As she hung up, feelings of exhilaration and anxiety collided within her. A new path had emerged, one that demanded more from her but also promised growth. Yet, with this bold direction came the reality that her team remained unsettled. They needed guidance and reassurance about this new ideology. Before she could fully embrace her vision, voices of doubt crept in. Was she prepared to face the scrutiny that would undoubtedly follow? The office would soon be buzzing with the aftermath of the video, corner conversations would arise, and her leadership would be tested in the face of criticism. Should she brace for impact, or could she harness this chaos as a formative crucible for her emerging leadership? She felt a weight settle on her shoulders again, anticipation mixing with anxiety. The stakes were higher than ever. She had to engage her team, redefine her leadership in real time, and prepare for the inevitable fallout of both reverberations and revelations ahead. What would she discover in this uncharted territory of leadership? Would her authenticity fortify her position or expose her vulnerabilities once and for all? With her heart racing, the challenges ahead loomed larger, birthing new questions of her identity as a leader ready to rise anew. Emily stood in the conference room, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows, bathing the space in a warm, golden hue. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation and tension. Her team awaited her guidance, ready to navigate the uncharted territory of their collective transformation. They had spent weeks fortifying their narratives through vulnerability, but now, the time had come to put their newfound strength into practice. Thank you all for being here today, Emily began, her voice steady, resonating with conviction. I know the past weeks have been tumultuous, and there is uncertainty about our future after the fallout from the video. But we hold the power to redefine this moment. As she observed her colleagues, she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. They were not just her team. They were individuals woven together by shared experiences, struggles, and the desire for a new beginning. Their faces reflected hope and skepticism in equal measure, and she was determined to bridge that gap. I understand the concerns you all carry, she continued, leaning into the discomfort of the moment. Your fears are valid. Public scrutiny could shake our unity. However, our journey does not end with vulnerability. It begins there. We must craft a vision together, one that honors our past but looks resolutely towards the future. One of her team members, Jenna, spoke up. But how do we ensure that authenticity doesn't divide us? We've all faced the fallout of your decisions. The words hung heavy in the air, but they were laced with a potential for growth. By embracing that reality together, Emily responded, her confidence surging. Every story matters, including yours. I've come to realize that while vulnerability exposes us, it also invites trust and connection. We will respect each other's perspectives and create a framework for engaging in dialogue, building our community as we progress. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and Emily felt the momentum shift. She could sense that they were ready to unite, to confront their ghosts and reclaim their narrative. I'm proposing that we hold regular open forums where everyone can voice their thoughts and apprehensions, she outlined. A space where we not only discuss our progress but also the vulnerabilities we face. Transparency will be our armor. With each word, Emily felt a surge of empowerment. She envisioned a collaborative environment where each individual could confidently contribute without fear of retribution, allowing their collective trauma to serve as a catalyst for their resurgence. Action is essential, Mark interjected, the spark of inspiration evident in his eyes. What if we create a project to engage the community affected by our actions? Something that directly addresses the harm while making it right. The room absorbed his ideas, and a chorus of yes and nods greeted his proposal. "That is brilliant, Mark," Emily exclaimed, feeling the energy pulse through her veins. "We can initiate dialogues not only within our company but extend it outwardly. By actively participating in community building, we'll demonstrate our commitment to rectifying our past mistakes." The spirit in the room had transformed from one of doubt to a burgeoning wave of enthusiasm. They could finally see that their narratives weren't singular. They were a tapestry of interconnected lives. As they brainstormed projects and initiatives, the scars of the past started to fade into the background, replaced by a vision for a future built on resilience and collaboration. "Let us redefine our impact, not just as a hotel chain but as a united team," she concluded, feeling exhilarated. "We've faced the storm together, and now we're equipped to become stewards of change." As conversations shifted into action plans, Emily felt a profound satisfaction seep into her core. She was no longer merely a CEO seeking redemption, but a leader committed to fostering genuine connections and rebuilding trust at every level. Weeks later, Emily stood at the podium within a community center brimming with excited faces, former staff and community members alike. This moment was the culmination of their efforts, a public acknowledgement of not just their past failures, but the growth they had all achieved together. "Our journey is just beginning," she addressed the crowd, her voice radiant with authentic passion. "This endeavor is not just about us. It's about establishing a foundation for future leaders. We're here to listen, to evolve, and to provide support to those we once failed. It's time for redemption, real redemption." Applause thundered around her, affirming the sincerity of their transformation. The sigh of relief that flooded her spirit was profound. She had faced the storms of retribution and emerged not only unbroken but flourishing. With the warmth of acceptance enveloping her, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment fill her heart. Her identity was no longer that of a ruthless CEO. She was an architect of a new culture grounded in humility, resilience, and compassion. As she basked in the moment, Emily realized she had achieved what once felt impossible: the reclamation of not just her narrative but those tied to her. Their vulnerabilities knitted the fabric of their shared journey. Together, they had transformed pain into purpose. This was her triumph. The future shimmered brightly ahead, a canvas ready to be painted with intentional actions driven by authenticity. No longer tethered to the haunting echoes of the past, Emily stood poised for the limitless possibilities that awaited her. Now was her moment to shine, to learn from the past and lead into an invigorating tomorrow filled with potential. You need to subscribe now to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can transform your life too. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support your favorite narratives. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's powerful journey, because your voice matters in this community. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to take this vital step in building our supportive community. Your actions make all the difference.